Shavua Tov, Kuf Lamed Beis, 132b, the last four words of the page. V'hodir Rava v'Rav Safra Tanoihi. This machlokes of Rava and Rav Safra, if you're able to learn that Mila Bizmana pushes off Tzarat with a Kavachomer, from the fact that Tzarat, from the fact that Mila pushes off Shabbat, is machloket Tanaim. Titania, this is really part of the last Gemara. Bisar ve'afa b'sheyesha meheret. Yimol, divrei Rabbi Yoshu. So, what does it say over here? That the word bisar, even if it's an extra word, even if it's beheret, you do it. Divrei Rabbi Yoshu. Rabbi Yonasan omer ein tzarich. Shabbat chamura docha. Tzarat le'kol shkem. Rabbi Yonasan says you don't need it. Since Shabbat, which is chamur, Mila can push off, Bismano, Mila Bismano. So Tzarat, which is less than Shabbat, for sure. So here you have a Beferush Machloket Tanaim. If from the fact that Mila Bismana pushes off Shabbat, can that teach you that it pushes off Tzarat? Or you need a special Pasuk. Okay? Fine. Omar Mar. If you do an action that's okay, and you know that something's going to come out of it, it's called the davar she'eino mitkaven. You don't have any plans for that. So therefore, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to give my child the brit. I'm not trying to take off the tzarat. So if it comes off, I'm not mitkaven for that. And we know that we go like Rabbi Shimon. Davar she'eino mitkaven mutar. It's only Rabbi Yehuda. He holds Asur. Rav Amar, wow. Rav Amar, afilu teim Rabbi Shimon, model Rabbi Shimon, psik reisha v'lo yamut. We keep saying this, right? We keep saying this. There are vast. Usually we say Abaye v'Rava. Say it together. Abaye v'Rava dam v'Tavayu. We said it many times in Shabbat. This Gemara came up the most in Shabbat. The whole Shabbat keeps coming up. So the Gemara says that since you know it's going to happen, so then it's considered like you mechaven. It's impossible to cut off the orla without the Abaye letle has tzvara. Says the Gemara, Abaye doesn't hold to that. Abaye v'Rava de'ami tavayu moider Rabbi Shimon b'psik reisha v'lo yamus. By the way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times just in this masechet. Then another 4 times throughout Shas. 11 times in Shas, this Gemara. 11 times. How many Gemaras are written 11 times? Very, very, very few. 7 times just in Masechet Shabbat. Abaye v'Rava tamid havayu moidel b'shem b'psik reisha leos. So the Gemara says, Basa d'shal mirava stavra. Meaning, he didn't hold like that at first. When he heard that Rava said that, so then he was masking, but at first, he was maimed the shita of Rabbi Yoshia, like Rabbi Yehuda, because he didn't know that according to Rabbi Shimon is moed b'psik reisha. This, some actually learn what Abaye and Rava said on something else. It says in Torah, you should be very careful with the negat to guard it very much. Right? So it's mashma la'asot yata oseh. You're not allowed to take it off with your hands. Okay? Which means you could do it like through some loophole. Which means like in a tricky way. If you don't do it directly, what do? You tie your shoes very tightly around. I'm just tying my shoes. Happens to be that's where my beheret is. I'm putting a load on top of my shoulder where my beheret is. and I keep it on for a long time. I'm going to walk someone, okay, if it comes off, it comes off. So the Torah only made it Isur la'asot. Okay? But if you do a different, not indirect act that will take this off, fine. Says the Gemara, what do I need to come onto this drasha of la'asot? But if it's not direct la'asot, even if the Torah didn't say la'asot, I would have known it's okay, because you're not being mechaven. I'm trying to tie my shoes. I'm trying to carry a package. Of course, if that results in that, it's fine. So on that, to that, that's why you have to come onto the special pasuk. And the Gemara says, twice on this page. So it's really 8 times in this masechet, 12 times in Shas. So, yeah. So the Gemara goes back to at the beginning, when Abaye thought that Bisar or Lato was extra, right? And Rabbi Yoshe said that the reason why we need it is to teach you that Mila is Doichet the Baheret, the Tzarat. So the Gemara says, V'Abaye Ali b'Rabbi Shimon, Hai Bisar my Ovidli. What's he going to do with Bisar? Meaning to say, right now we know that he needs Bisar. Why? Because if you hold like Rabbi Yonatan, then you have a Kal Chomer. If you don't hold like Rabbi Yonatan, you don't have a Kal Chomer, you need a pasuk that says you can do the Milah. So now we know that everybody needs that pasuk if you don't hold the Kal Chomer, because even Reb Shimon is moded b'psik reisha v'lo yamut, that it's going to be asur. So you need a special heter from the Torah to say Bisar that you could do it. But the question is, when Abaye thought that it was only Rabbi Yehuda before he heard the svar of Rava, and he before he heard Rava and he came onto Rava's on board with Rava. So what did Abaye think Rabbi Shimon does with Bisar? It's extra. Meaning, Bisar teaches you that you're allowed to take off the tzarat with the Milah. But if you don't have, but according to Rabbi Shimon, you don't need that, because it's a davar she'em mischaven. At that point, he didn't realize that by psik reisha, Rabbi Shimon is moide. So if you didn't realize that, so what's Rabbi Shimon? He doesn't need Bisar, because it's davar she'em mischaven. So Omer Rav Amram, it's not talking about it. The pasuk is talking about, it's teaching you Bisar on a gadol that has Brit Milah to do, and he knows what he's doing, and he says, "You know why I'm doing a Brit Milah? This guy's doing Brit Milah to be able to take off Tzarat. All the years he didn't do Brit Milah, now he's doing it to take off Tzarat. Hey, like that." So therefore it's still mutter. Why? Because the mitzvah of Milah is dochet tzarat. Okay? That's what we thought it meant. So the Gemara says, Tinach Godol, that's good for a Godol. Koton, Ma'ikal Meimar. The Koton doesn't have any kavana for the Ktitzat Baheret. So why would, according to Reb Shimon, why does he need the word Bisar by Koton? We have 2 times that it says Yimol Bisar Lato. It says it in Bereshit, and it says it in Vayikra. So what do you need by Koton? When the father says he wants to do it for that purpose. So therefore, you need Bisar or Lato to let you know that you could do it. It says the Gemara, V'i'ika acher li'aved acher. Says the Gemara, if there's another person there, let another person do the milah, because the other person is only having in mind for the mitzvah. And we're going now according to Rabbi Shimon that holds that if you end up doing something that's wrong, even if it's a psik reisha, because this is before he was chayzer, it's going to be okay. To Omer Rabbi Shimon Lakish, Kol Makam She'ata Moitze Aseh V'Lo Yisaseh, Im Ata Yochel L'Kayim Shnei Mutav V'Im Lav Yovi Aseh V'Yitchel Lo Yisaseh. So the Gemara said like this: You should dafka use somebody else. Why is Bisar Olosoi saying that the father is allowed to do it? Why? Because even though the father wants to take off the beheres, But since it's going to be a mitzvah, so Bisar Lasai says, do it. Why do you need a pasuk? No, meaning to say, why is the pasuk allowing? The pasuk is allowing you to do an asay to take off a lois asay. But if Shlokish taught us that rule only applies, we're not able to keep both of them. But if you could, you should. Now over here you could. Why? Because you take another friend of yours, okay, and someone else should get there. Someone else is by the milah, and they say, "Oh yeah, well the father is allowed to do it, even though he wants to take off the baheres, because the pasuk Bistar says he's allowed to do it. So he's allowed to do the lois asay, right? But if you and me are standing there, we should say, 1 second. I don't care about the kid's baheret. So I'm going to do the milah only having one thing in mind. The milah. It's psik resha. We're now on the tzad that psik resha is still called Eino, is still considered Eino mitchaven. And then it will be, it's not like I'm doing an avera at all. Because I'm Eino mitchaven. When the father does it, he's mitchaven, so he's doing an avera. Just the Torah is saying, do it anyways. Because the essay over here, the assay, the positive command is stronger. Yeah, but this positive command is only stronger to the negative if you have no other way to do it. So the Gemara says the leka acher. The pasuk Bisar is for a case where the father is alone. He's in Russia. He's giving the kid a brit. He wants to take off the tzarat. He says, I want to take it off. Could I do the milah? I mean, I'm chavim for that also. The halacha is, yes, he could. Calls you up and the rabbi, I want to do it. I don't know why he's calling you if he's willing to do it, but he's mechavim for that. So that's the halacha. Omar mar, Yom Tov eino doicha ela bizmano levad. We had before, Shabbat and Yom Tov, only milah bizmano. Yom Tov, only bizmano. Meno ani mili. How do you know that it only pushes off bizmano? Now, why is he only asking on Yom Tov? Because Shabbat has a asay too. So that's why Shabbat, Shaloi Bizmanom, yeah. The way they say is like this. The Ram Shiv says like this: Shabbos, you can't push off Shabbos with milah because it's a lois sheyesh by kares. That's karet Shabbat. Yom Tov doesn't have karet, so let the asay. Now, so then you tell me what? So Shabbat, what? It's karet, so you can't push it off. So that's why you need a pasuk bayom. Bayom ashvini yimal b'sar alato. Even Shabbat, but the Gemara is asking now. So that pasuk only came from milah bizmana bayom ashmini yimal b'sar alosei. But Yom Tov doesn't need to come on to that drasha of bayom ashmini yimal b'sar alosei. Forget the whole pasuk. Let's say if it wasn't there. Yom Tov, what do you have? What's the problem? There's no kares. So you have an asay, doche, lo taseh. That's the rule. Shabbos needs a special pasuk that milah bizmana bayom ashmini yimal bayom, because Shabbat, you can't push off Shabbat with the normal rules of Esei Doicha Lo Taseh because it's a Lo Taseh Sheyesh Bo Karet. Is that what I'm telling you? You got it? Yeah. But Yom Tov doesn't have it. So the Gemara says, Omar Chizki v'chein Tana Devei Chizki Omar Kro. When you eat the Korban Pesach on the night of the 15th, Lo Totiru Mimenu Ad Boker, don't leave it over to the morning. She'ein Tamad Lomar Ad Boker. The words Ad Boker are seemingly extra. Lo Totiru Mimenu. Ma Tamad Lomar Ad Boker, Ba'akatuv Litin Lo Boker Sheni L'Sreifato. The Torah is teaching you that if you have notar, if you have leftovers, which is prohibited to leave it over, but if you have it normally, what do you have to do? Burn it. Don't burn it in the next morning. Wait till Chol HaMoed in the morning, the 16th, and then burn it. Okay? Why? Because since the Korban Pesach is brought on Erev Yom Tov, okay? So it's a weekday carbon. You eat it on Yom Tov, but it's brought on Chol. So burning it is the needs of the carbon. The carbon now, in order to deal with its holiness, that's past its time, needs to be burnt. That's called Sorchei Chol. And therefore, you're not allowed to do it on Yom Tov. So Mila Shaloi Bizman is the same thing. Since it's the real Mila, when did it fall out? On the 8th day was before Yom Tov. Now it's the 9th day on Yom Tov. So it's called Tzorchei Chol. Like that? That's what the Gemara is saying. It's mamish geshmak. So that's why you can't do it on Yom Tov. Just like you learned from Notar, this is called Tzorchei Chol. Abaya Omar Kro, Olat Shabbat b'Shabbato. Only the Olat of Shabbat is done b'Shabbato. V'lo Olat Chol b'Shabbat, v'lo Olat Chol b'Yom Tov. But the Olat of the Chol of Erev Shabbat, or the Olah of Erev Yom Tov, you're not allowed to burn them on the Mizbeach on Shabbat. You have to burn them earlier. Okay? And if you've missed it, too bad. What do? You leave them over like kachim that got ruined, and then after Shabbat you burn them. Okay? So the Gemara is saying, Mila Shalei Bizmano is like an Ola of Chol. You're not allowed to do on Yom Tov. Rava Omar, same thing, right? Again, Rava Omar Kro, Hu levado ye'aseh Hu levado are extra. The Torah says, Ach asher ye'ochel l'chol nefesh, Hu levado ye'aseh lachem. But Kuru just said, Ach asher ye'ochel l'chol nefesh, ye'aseh lachem. It was Hu levado. That only. It's a very, if you tell me one thing, I know it's only that. You have to repeat only that. So who is coming to teach you? V'lei machshirin, not the preparatory steps, only the actual shchita, baking, bishul. Okay? But you're not allowed to prepare an oven, to make an oven, in order to or prepare a knife in order to shecht. Livado, v'lo milah shelo bizmana da'ate mikav v'chomer. But not milah shelo bizmana, which I would have been matter with a kav v'chomer. Okay? So, now, what's the kav v'chomer? Now, the kav v'chomer is like this. If tzarat is docha the korbanot, milah is stronger than it, and it pushes it off, like we learned before from the word bisar. Yom Tov, which is even, right, lighter than the avodah, for sure milah will push it off. Now the problem is that sounds like the kav v'chomer before we said with Shabbat, but Rava already knocked off that kav v'chomer because he said the only reason why tzarat you don't do the issur of tzarat for the avodah is not because it's stronger than avodah. It's only because if you take it off, the kohen still won't be available. So now, how could that be the kav v'chomer that Rav is talking about here? So the Ritva answers for Rashi that the pasuk, it's unbelievable, is dashing itself because you would think that you can make the kav v'chomer. So the pasuk is teaching that the kav v'chomer is not a good kav v'chomer, precisely to tell you that din of Rava told you. Sometimes you need a pasuk to negate a kav v'chomer, even though the kav v'chomer is not good, to show you that the kav v'chomer is not good. Hagufa. Okay, so that's why it says levadoi. Levadoi is an exclusion. Only these things. Don't do bris milah. Ravashi Amar, another way that we know milah shlei bizmano on Yom Tov doesn't push it off. Shabbaton asehu v'hava Yom Tov aseh v'lo taseh ve'en aseh dochet lo taseh v'aseh. By Yom Tov, it's not just a lo taseh. Shabbaton is a positive. Cease to do melacha. So it's Yom Tov becomes now a lo taseh and an aseh. So now the aseh of milah can't push both of them off. Okay? Says the Gemara, Klalom and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva told Rabbi Eliezer in the Mishnah, nothing doing. Only the things that you're not able to do on Shabbat, you could do on Shabbat for the Milah, which is actually the cutting. But anything else, all the machshirin, all kol machshirin that Rabbi Eliezer allowed, he doesn't allow. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, Aloch Rabbi Akiva. And we do pass like this. Utanan nami gabi pesach ki hai gavno. We also pass like this in Ilchot Pesach. Klal Omer Rabbi Akiva Kam Dach She'ef Shelo La'asos Erev Shabbos. In a Doiches HaShabbos Shchita She'ef Shelo La'asos Erev Shabbos Doiches HaShabbos, which means that if you have a Korban Pesach who's being brought on Erev Pesach, which happens to fall out the 14th that year on Shabbat, so what are you allowed to do to this Korban? You're allowed to do anything that you're able to do before Shabbat, you can't do on Shabbat. Let's say you had to cut off a certain little mum. If you cut it off, it becomes kosher. So, since you could have done that Erev Shabbat, you can't do it on Shabbat. It's too late. But shchita, shchita, you couldn't do, because it wasn't its zman. Its zman was only the 14th in the afternoon. That's Shabbat afternoon. So you could do. And we need Rav Yehuda to say in the name of Rav that the halacha follows Rabbi Akiva in regards to Milah, that it's only the actual Milah, not things that you could have done before, and in Hilchot Pesach. The Iyash min agabi Milah hostom hu demachshin ef shalasois me'es me'loi dochu Shabbos leka kares. There's no onesh of karet if you don't if you push off the Brit Milah to tomorrow. You know why? Because even though Milah, if you don't do it, there is karet, but if you do it tomorrow, there won't be karet. Okay? Meaning to say, these actually are the two mitzvot aseh, Milah and Pesach, that if you don't do this karet. The Gemara is still differentiating between the two karet. This one, there is no karet tomorrow. I'll bring it, I'll do the Milah tomorrow. So maybe it's not good, right? So therefore, maybe that's why the Torah doesn't allow machshirin to be done. Yeah, I'll have to push it off. But at least I'm not pushing it off to a vadai karet, to a definite karet. By Pesach, however, Ava Pesach dika karet emalit chu Shabbat. Pesach, with this karet, maybe the halacha follows Rabbi Eliezer. And we say, no, if you don't do the things today on Shabbat, the preparatory acts, and you won't be able to bring the Pesach, then you'll end up not bringing the Korban Pesach this year, which you can't bring it late. The Korban Pesach doesn't have a late. Only has a late for an onus. But over here, maybe I don't have an onus because I could do what Rabbi Eliezer says. Do the machshirim today. In fact, I would only tell you that by Pesach we go like Rabbi Akiva. But Milah has a certain Shlosha Britot. That's why I have to say both of them. Zok the Heilige Mishnah. Very geschmacke Gemara. We're going to try to move so that we're going to end up finishing maybe a few minutes after 11:30. But I want you to. So that's why I was going very fast tonight. It's too fast?
No, it's good.
It's good. No, it's good. Right. So Teilul Mishnah. I hope everybody, whoever is on this, if Shalom Weisels is here, a good tivach. David, a good tivach. Lior, a good tivach. Michael, a good tivach. Daniel, a good tivach. And all of class, all my thousands and thousands of people watching this thing, whatever it is. You do all the tzorchei milah b'Shabbos. All tzorchei milah on Shabbos. Moyalin, the actual milah, the cutting of the arla. Uporin. Priya is the skin that still covers the Rosh Hagid, the top of where you did the milah and cut it off. It still will not look, you won't be able to see that it's bris milah, so you have to peel back the skin. That's that. Umoitzitzin. And you suck the wound, the blood of the wound, of the milah, even though you are making a chabura on Shabbos, because it's a sakona for the child if you don't do, therefore you're allowed to be motzetz. V'natnin alea ispilonis, and you put like a bandage, v'kamon, kamon is a certain type of spice, put it on, when it's grounded up already, which we did for refuah. If you didn't grind it up before Shabbat, so lo es b'shinav, you do it with a shinui, and you crush it with your teeth. Pre-corona days, v'noisen, and then you put it down on the kid, yeah? And you put the bandage on the child. Now, they have a beautiful footnote over here. You got to read it. It's unbelievable. They put it into the Gemara here. He says, that when he does mitzitza, what happens is it doesn't allow the blood to congeal inside. It lets it flow. Gives it because it has to flow, because if it congeals, it's dangerous. Infection, for whatever it is. Rashi over here says, She'ein adam nitik mechab. She'ein adam nitik michibure ela idea mitzitza. Rashi says, it's only going to really come out through the mitzitza. So they bring that over here. B'doroto acharinu kamu oridim ala mitzitza levatola b'tayna. Shalafi chachmei refu b'derisein ein bat kol heels. People say today, the doctors say it's not needed. The poskim will say it's not true. You're mechuyev to do mitzitza. And then they bring down that it's part of the mitzvah of milah. There are some that do it with a straw, but others hold you can't. What, with a what? Glass tube and this and that. Okay, fine. Weiter. Im lo taraf yain v'shemen me'erev Shabbat. If you don't mix wine and oil together from Erev Shabbat, they used to do that. And they used to beat them together. They used to put it on the milah for refuah. So then do them separately. Don't mix them together. If they get mixed together on the milah, it's fine. No, you can put them into one plate. And as long as you don't mix them, if they get mixed, they get mixed. What's the isser to beat things together? Because it looks like you're about to fry them or to cook them. And you're now let them make like a type of like a pocket that they would dress the Brit Milah up until the top part, and they would tie it so that the or doesn't regrow itself back onto the gid. And it's called chaluk. Shabbat, you're not going to make this chaluk. Okay? Because you're being misaken keli. You could wrap a little bandage around the v'noid kimerev Shabbat. And if you didn't prepare this little bandage around before Shabbat, now you're not going to be able to carry it. You make a shino, you carry it in a funny way. You actually do it in a derech malbush, which is different than the regular way. Therefore, they allowed you to do this, at least with the Issa de Rabbanon, when there's from another chotzer. Fine. Seems like they didn't let you do it Issa de Raisa. They ask, what's the difference between that and grinding, which is Issa de Raisa? If you do it with a shino, you could for the baby. Kul says the Gemara, Mechtik, Toni Kulu, Kol Tzorchi Mila, last 3 Mai. So why does it say Kol Tzorchi Mila if you're going to mention all of them anyways? Oh, you say Kol Tzorchi Mila. And then you list all of them. So just list what you're allowed to do and don't say Kol Tzorchi Mila. Coming to include something else. That's Yehud Ton Rabban. Hamol Kol Zman Shu Isi B'Mila, Choyzu Ben Al Tzis Ma'aknes Amila Ben Al Tzis She'en Ma'aknes Amila. Someone who does Mila on Shabbat, I spoke about this. My son's Brit, my first child, 20 years ago. This was the piece because it was the Mila on Shabbos. I said Shtekutay on this. Screw up. Okay, fine. He could, as long as he's still involved, in the Mila, still in the cutting, and then he realizes, hey, there are still some strands of skin that are left over. They're called tzitzin, like tzitzit, strings of Mila. Then he's allowed to even cut off the parts that are not essential for the Mila. Okay? Now, what is the the parts that are essential. The parts that are essential are the parts that the skin that covers most of the atara, which means that if you have enough skin that could cover most of the atara, then you didn't do the mitzvah. It's not done. So you have to at least get majority of the skin that will cover the atara off. Okay? So the rest of, now let's say I did the majority. Now you have strings that are not ma'akev, but they're still part of the arla. So on a regular day, of course you're doing a mitzvah. So here you could do them too. It's not chil Shabbos. Because since I haven't finished the action of milah, it's all considered one action. And we already know that this action is mutar on Shabbat, so you could do it. Peresh, but once you separate your hand, so then al tzitzin ha'ma'akven es ha'milah chayzer, al tzitzin she'em ma'akven es ha'milah ein chayzer. You could only go back to the tzitzin that are ma'akven es ha'milah. Now, what does it mean to separate? It's a big shayla. If you're still doing the priya, many hold that's not even considered a separate. Even if you finish the cup, you're still doing the priya. It's all part of remove the arla. Fine. But you can only go back to the tzitzin ha'ma'akvin that are essential for the milah, not for the other ones. So, our Mishnah is coming to include this din by saying kol tzarkei milah, that even the tzitzin that are not ma'akev, you may cut if you're still involved in the milah because it's all one action. Man tana perish and chayzer. Who is the man the Omer that says that if you let go, you're not allowed to come back to the tzitzin she'enon ma'akvin? Omer Rabbi Bar Bachana, Omer Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shmuel ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Breki. It's Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Breki, the Tanya Abba, so Shechali is b'Shabbos. We had this the other day. A while back, mafshit is a pesach ad ha'chozeh. What do? You skin the animal till the chest. And there, you take out the parts that are supposed to be burnt on the mizbeach. And that part could be done, because you need that to be done on Shabbat. That's doche Shabbat. Okay, but after you do that, you're not allowed to continue skinning it, because that's asur on Shabbat. Okay, why? Because what did you do after you got to the chest? You stopped skinning. Then you're able to cut out and pull out the emurim. Why couldn't you pull out the emurim regularly? Because they're going to get stuck with the hairs. Remember, it's not going to be covered. So, Kol Hashem l'maneu. Remember that pasuk? Everything you do for Hashem is for His kavod. You have to make it nice. So Rabbi Shmuel says, okay, but you're a perish. So you're not in the middle of that action anymore, of the mutter action to get the emurim. If you're in the middle of it, so you can do the whole thing and make it nice, but you can't. So, but the Chachamim allowed it. Okay? So you see it's Rabbi Shmuel ben Yochanan ben Breki. So the Gemara says, Mimai atkal lekam Rabbi Shmuel ben Yochanan ben Breki hastam elam shum dolei be'inan zeh kelev anveyu. Avol hocha lebe'inan zeh kelev anveyu hocha nami. Over there, Rabbi Shmuel, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Breki, says it because it's not going to make it nicer, the mitzvah, if you continue skinning it. But here, that it makes the milah much nicer, right? Because the chefta of the milah, the item of the milah, is the brit, is the aver, is the gid. So therefore, if you do a nice job, it's a nicer mitzvah. So zeh kelev anveyu. Hachanami. So here too, maybe Rabbi Shmuel ben Yochanan ben Breki would be moida that even after your peresh, you still allowed to go back and take the tzitzin and namakiv. How? What are you doing now? You're doing an ister of chabura on Shabbat, which is not even ma'akiv. The answer is it's all part of the mitzvah of milah. Milah was doiche Shabbat today. This is a part of milah. It's the which part? The zeh kelev anveyu part. It's part of the mitzvah. Titanya zeh kelev anveyu hasno elefon of the mitzvah. It's a very, very famous brayso. This is the brayso I spoke about. This is a very famous brayso. Hasno elefanav b'mitzvot hitna'eh. Purify the mitzvahs before him. I say the fun of stukino, of lulivno, of shoifino, of tzitzisno, of sevtorino, uchtov bo lishmo, bidyonai, and write. What does it mean lishmo? Everything has to be lishmo. It's a good question. Write with a nice ink, bekulmusno, with a nice pen. Okay. So I wanted to say, like the media, that it means a pen that will come out nice. Some others say not like that. Belavler umon, with a professional slave of the korcho b'shiroi noid, and wrap it in beautiful silks. Ve'anveu means something else. It means ani vehu. I will make myself like him, meaning emulate his ways. Just like he is gracious and merciful, so too you shall be. Okay? Says the Gemara, Elam Ravashi. So, what was the kasha? The kasha was that maybe Bishol B'nai Rabbi Yochanan Breakup is going to be Maida here because it's that Kalim Anveyu. Elam Ravashi, Hamani Rabbi Yosi. The Tanan, in regards to Kiddush HaChodesh in Beis Din, remember that? Through the Eidim that saw the new moon, they're allowed to be Mechal the Shabbat in order to become and testify. Bein Shenira Ba'alil, Uvein Shelo Nira Ba'alil, even if it was seen Ba'alil, clear, everybody saw it. Uvein Shelo Nira Ba'alil, where it wasn't seen clearly. They're allowed to leave their houses and come out of the Tchum of Shabbos. Well, what's the chances that Bezdin didn't see it? Bezdin saw it. It was Nira Ba'alil. So what do we need? What do we need you guys to leave your Tchum and come? Bezdin saw it. It's a beautiful moon. The answer is they're allowed to. So you see that even why? So they're saying it's a mitzvah to do it even on Shabbos. So it doesn't matter if the mitzvah is needed, not needed, ma'akvin, not ma'akvin. You do it. That's why over here also, even if it's tzitzit she'ein ma'akvin, you do it. But Rabbi Yosi says no. If it's nir ba'al, you can't be mechal Shabbos. Says the Gemara, mimai. So what's your right that Rabbi Yosi would hold over here? That So what's the Gemara saying? That once you perish, you can't do the tzitzin she'ein ma'akvin. Mimai dilmat kalam yechol Rabbi Yosi hasan lu shavdulin nitz Shabbos lidochos. Avol achadin nitz Shabbos lidochot hachanami. Meaning, over there by Kiddush HaChodesh, we don't need you at all. It's a clear moon. So obviously we don't need you, so that's why you shouldn't come. But here, anyways, we need you. We need the moil to do the milah. The question is now the tzitzit she'ein ma'akvin, once he's perish. Once we needed him already, hachanami, maybe Rabbi Yosi will be masking that you're allowed to go back to the tzitzit that are not ma'akiv, even if you were perish already. And we see this just as like a long extension of the first action that was mutar and we needed. It's actually the Rabbanon that argued to Rabbi Yosi in the Mishnah Menachot. Over there it says, how do you put the lechem apanim, 6 chalot and 6 chalot, 12 altogether on the shulchan? Arba'a kohanim nichnasin, shnayim biyadam shnei storim. 2 of them have shnei storim. 2 of them are carrying the 2 trays of the lechem apanim. Each tray carries 6 chalot. Ushnayim biyadam shnei vazichin. Another 2 kohanim are holding the 2 little, like bowls or spoons, like large spoons, like a candle with a big golden spoon of livona, frankincense, which they would put on the shulchan. By the way, it's like a korban mincha. Every Shabbat, it would be. It's not just like chalot that you eat. It's a korban to Hashem. What do you mean korban? I never heard you put any of that on. So you bake it and the kohanim eat the 12 chalot. They divide it between the kohanim echnosim. Every week they would switch off on Shabbat. The answer is, yes, it is a mincha. Which part am I marking for the mincha? The frankincense. You take a kmitza, you put it on the mizbech, and then the shirayim of the mincha, the leftovers, are the chalot. Okay? So they hold the other the two spoons. And you have another 4 kohanim that are coming to remove the old ones. 2 of them to take off the 2 trays. The ones who enter stand on the north. And their faces are to the south. Now, tzafon is more chashuv than dorim. This is the Mishnah in Sukkah. Because you remember, we always say, it's the final of Hashem. We say the Kabbalah, you have to do the kachim, you have to slaughter them on the northern part of the Azara. Okay? So in order to show that they're more chashiv, because they're coming in to start doing the avodah, and the other ones are leaving, so therefore you put them on tzafon. In the opposite way. They take the old one and they place down the new one. This person's tefach, his hand, like this, while they're removing them off, the other one's hand is right there, it's on. So there's never a second that the shulchan does not have chalot on them. Mishum shenemar, because it says v'natatal shulchan lechapelim lifanai tamid. Rabbi Yossi Omer, afilu elu notlin ve'elu menachim. Even if these take it off and then these put it on, abzeh hayat tamid. That's also considered tamid. Tamid doesn't mean every single second. There shouldn't be a quarter of a second without it on. It means it shouldn't go overnight without it. But you see that the Chachamim hold that the word tamid means constant, and you won't fulfill the dictum, the connotation of the word tamid, if you take it off and then a second later afterwards you put it on. Tamid has to be constant. So therefore they're going to hold over here that once he already took his hand off the milah, or he stopped the priya, whatever, so you can't consider the new act as an extension of his old act, and therefore it's going to be asur on Shabbat. But according to Rabbi Yossi, it's always considered tamid. It's considered one big hemshich. It's going to be mutar. Tanu Rabbanan taught mehalkati netamila. Halkati means you take off all the extras that were ma'akev. V'im lo hilket. If you didn't, anush karet. Mani, who's this? Amar Rav Kahana Uman. Who's getting the karet? Uman, the moil. Why? What karet? What karet? What is he doing? He didn't finish the milah, he gets karet? The answer is he did it on Shabbat. And he didn't finish the milah. So what'd you do? You didn't even do the mitzvah of milah. You left too much skin on. That's going to cover the majority of the gid. So what'd you do over here? Oh, all you did was chabura. You didn't do a mitzvah of milah. So that's karet for him. Maskif l'Rav Papa lemel hu ano avdi palga the mitzvah atun avdi tu palga the mitzvah. Why should the moil get karet? He'll say, it's not. I did nothing. It's nothing yet, but it will be if you finish it. You finish the second half, and then it will come out that my first half was part of the mitzvah. So why should I get karet? I'm in the middle of an act that the part that I did could become a mitzvah, and it won't be karet. So you can't say it's karet. I never get karet. What you say? So. Why should I get karet? Elam Arafapa Godol. It's talking about a Godol. And it's not talking about Shabbat. It's just on a Wednesday. It says like this. He decides, okay, I'm doing milah to myself. He does milah, and that's it. Or he gets a mile to do milah to him, and he says, okay, stop. Enough. Yeah, but that's not enough. You didn't get the milah. It's kilu loimal. It's as if he didn't get the milah. Just stop. Okay, so that person will get karet if he doesn't ever do anything more. Of course, by a gadol it says if you don't have brit milah. So what's the chiddush of the brayta? Elam Ravashi l'olam uman. It's going back to the moil. Uchein the osam ben hashmoshes is Shabbos. He came right before the end of Shabbat, right before Motzei Shabbat. For Amrulei, and they told him lo misapkat. You're not going to have time to do the milchata. Okay, which means like this: if you start it now, okay, you're going to get into ben hashmashot, which is going to be a suffix. You're not allowed to do it by suffix, okay, because because it's maybe it's nighttime, and nighttime there's no mitzvah anymore. So you're going to do it right now. If you start now, you might finish or get to the actual milah, finishing the milah by the time it's ben Esher Shvat. So then it will come out that the part that you did on Shabbat was just a chabura, wasn't a mitzvah. The mitzvah is only completed. For Amalu, when he says back, misafkina, I will have enough time. The oven I did v'lo yistapik. And he wasn't able to do it in time before he ended up doing it live. So it comes out that what did he do? He made a chabura on Shabbat. He didn't do the mitzvah milah. Anush karet. And he gets karet. So what the Braita is telling you now, that the moil has to check that he's able to be hilaket, mehalket, with enough time before the end of Shabbat. Chazak Baruch.